Hello everyone, welcome to today's story. After weeks of illness and pain, Alex finally opened his eyes to the soft morning light spilling across the room. The sterile scent of medicine still lingered, but for the first time, he could hear birds outside the window. His heart was fragile but alive, just like his hope. At the doorway stood Lytuna, her eyes filled with relief and tenderness. She had spent sleepless nights beside his bed, wiping sweat from his brow, whispered prayers into the darkness. And now, as Alex slowly sat up, she held something behind her back, a small, carefully wrapped box tied with a faded ribbon. "I made this for you," she said softly, her voice trembling. A reminder that you're not alone. Alex stared at her, his throat tightening. For a man who had faced boardrooms and battles, no victory felt greater than this quiet moment. Inside that tiny box lay a hand-woven bracelet, made from threads of old fabric from the farm where they first met. Tears welled in his eyes. "Lytuna, after everything, you're still here." She smiled gently, because love doesn't leave when illness comes. If you love this story, please subscribe and help us reach 10,000 followers to continue sharing these emotional journeys. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the hospital window, washing the white sheets in a warm glow. Alex lay quietly, watching Lytuna move around the room. She was folding his blanket, arranging fruit on the table, and humming softly, a tune he hadn't heard since their days at the small farm. He remembered those mornings when she would wake before dawn, feed the chickens, and prepare breakfast while Henry laughed in the yard. Life had been simple then, full of noise, laughter, and love. But now, after illness had nearly taken him, Alex realized how fragile everything truly was. Lytuna turned around and caught him staring. "Why are you looking at me like that?" she asked playfully. Alex smiled weakly. "Because I'm afraid if I blink, you might disappear." Her heart clenched. She sat beside him, gently taking his hand. "I won't disappear, Alex. I made a promise. Not just to love you when you're strong, but to stay when you're weak." He looked down at the bracelet on his wrist, the threads worn yet beautiful. "You gave me strength when I had none," he whispered. "You've already given me everything." Lytuna shook her head softly. "No, Alex. What I gave you was love. But what you must give yourself is forgiveness. Stop blaming yourself for getting sick. Stop carrying the weight alone." Her words hit him like a wave. He had been carrying guilt. Guilt for overworking, for ignoring her calls, for the night she waited in the rain while he chased endless contracts. But now, her calm voice melted the walls around his heart. He reached out and brushed away a tear on her cheek. "When I recover, I'll build us a life away from boardrooms and hospitals. I want to see Henry grow up with laughter, not fear." Lytuna smiled through tears. "That's the Alex I fell in love with, not the CEO, but the man who believed love could heal." Outside, the wind rustled the leaves. It wasn't just a breeze, it was a whisper of a new beginning. Days passed, and the color slowly returned to Alex's face. The doctors called it a steady recovery, but to Lytuna it was nothing short of a miracle. Every morning she would arrive at the hospital with a gentle smile, holding Henry's tiny hand. The boys' laughter filled the room like sunlight, proof that love itself was the best medicine. On the 7th morning, the nurse removed Alex's IV. "You'll be discharged soon," she said kindly. Tuna's eyes glistened. She looked at Alex, and for the first time in weeks, he managed a real smile. "Home," he whispered. "I can finally go home." But before leaving, Tuna reached into her worn handbag. Her fingers brushed against a small, neatly wrapped package tied with a red ribbon. She hesitated for a moment, her heart pounding. Then she stepped closer to his bed. "Alex," she said softly, "this is for you." He blinked in surprise. "For me?" She nodded, placing the gift in his trembling hands. "It's not expensive, but every part of it was made with my heart." Alex untied the ribbon slowly, his movements weak but deliberate. Inside was a hand-sewn handkerchief, embroidered with delicate blue threads. At one corner, two small initials, A and T, were stitched together, surrounded by tiny flowers. The fabric was uneven, the stitching imperfect, but the love behind it was flawless. Tuna's cheeks flushed. "I made it while you were sleeping. I wanted you to have something from me. Something to remind you that you're not alone." For a long moment, Alex couldn't speak. His throat tightened, and his eyes filled with tears. "No one's ever given me something like this before," he whispered. "In my world, gifts are about money and power. But this is love made real." Tuna smiled gently. "When I saw you fighting to breathe, I realized how fragile everything is. You used to protect everyone, Alex. Your company, your family, your reputation. But now it's my turn to protect you." He reached out and held her hand tightly. "Then let me promise you something," he said, voice trembling. "When I walk out of this hospital, I'll protect what truly matters, you and Henry. No more boardrooms, no more pretending to be invincible." Tears slipped down Tuna's cheeks. "You don't have to promise. Just live. That's all I need." At that moment, Henry giggled from his stroller, as if sealing their vow. The sound made both of them laugh through their tears. Alex lifted the handkerchief, brushing it against his heart. "This," he said softly, "is the most valuable thing I've ever owned." Outside the hospital window, the sky began to clear after days of rain. The sunlight poured in, warm, forgiving, and full of hope. It was not just the end of an illness, it was the beginning of their healing. The day Alex was discharged, the morning air carried a quiet calm after the long rain. Tuna pushed his wheelchair toward the car, her movements gentle but determined. Beside her, little Henry toddled along, clutching a small stuffed bear. The hospital doors closed behind them, and with it, a chapter of fear and helplessness seemed to end. Alex inhaled deeply, feeling the crisp air fill his lungs. "I never realized how beautiful the world could be," he murmured. Tuna smiled softly. "That's because now you're seeing it with a heart that's been through a storm." When they arrived at the family mansion, the atmosphere immediately shifted. The servants bowed respectfully, yet their eyes darted nervously between Alex and his mother, Mrs. Min, who stood at the top of the stairs. Her expression was cold, controlled, a contrast to the trembling relief in Tuna's face. "Welcome home, Alex," she said stiffly. "You look thinner." Alex nodded slightly. "I'm still recovering." Her gaze shifted to Tuna, and the tension thickened. "And you brought her here again? Shouldn't she be resting somewhere else, taking care of her chores?" Tuna bowed politely. "Good morning, ma'am." Her voice was calm, but her fingers tightened around Henry's hand. Mrs. Min's lips curved faintly, not in kindness but in disapproval. It seems illness has made my son forget his place, or perhaps love has blinded him. Before Alex could speak, Tuna whispered, "It's all right. I'll wait outside." "No," Alex interrupted, his voice firm. "You'll stay." He turned to face his mother fully, his eyes burning with a quiet resolve she had never seen before. "Mother, when I was lying in that hospital bed, I realized how much time I've wasted chasing things that don't matter. You've always wanted me to build an empire, to be strong, to be perfect. But what's the use of all that if I can't protect the people I love?" Mrs. Min's face stiffened. "You're talking nonsense, Alex. Love doesn't pay the bills. It doesn't save a collapsing company. But it saved me," he said, his tone steady. "When I was dying, it wasn't the company that gave me strength. It was her and Henry." Tuna's eyes widened. Her heart raced, not from fear but from the overwhelming truth in his words. Mrs. Min took a step closer, her voice rising. "Do you intend to throw away your future for her? For a woman beneath your status?" Alex's hand tightened around the embroidered handkerchief in his pocket. "Tuna's gift. I'm not throwing my future away," he said quietly. "I'm choosing the right one." For a long moment, silence filled the room. Then Mrs. Min's shoulders dropped slightly, exhaustion visible beneath her pride. "You're your father's son," she muttered bitterly. "Stubborn to the end." Alex exhaled slowly. "Maybe, but for once I'm proud of that." Tuna approached hesitantly, her voice trembling. "Madam, I know I can't erase your worries, but please believe I never wanted to take him away from his family. I only want to build one with him." Mrs. Min glanced at her, then at Henry, whose tiny hands reached curiously toward his grandmother. The moment stretched, fragile, uncertain. For the first time, Mrs. Min didn't pull away. She crouched slightly and touched Henry's cheek. "He has Alex's eyes," she whispered. "The same foolish eyes that believe love can conquer all." Alex smiled faintly. Maybe those eyes aren't so foolish after all. The storm that had lingered between mother and son began to soften, not vanish, but weaken. Tuna felt tears sting her eyes. That evening, the three of them sat together at the long dining table. The silverware gleamed under warm lights. For the first time in years, the house felt like a home again. Not because it was perfect, but because it was honest. As the night deepened, Tuna whispered to Alex, "Do you think she'll ever truly accept us?" Alex took her hand under the table, his thumb brushing over the embroidered initials, A and T. "She doesn't have to, not yet," he said softly. "Because love doesn't need permission. It just needs to endure." Outside, the wind had calmed, the storm had passed. But inside their hearts, a new strength was born, fragile, hopeful, and fiercely alive. The next morning, sunlight streamed gently through the lace curtains of Alex's room. The scent of fresh jasmine filled the air. On the nightstand lay Tuna's handkerchief, the small, delicate piece of fabric that had traveled from her hands to his heart. Alex woke to the sound of laughter downstairs. It was Henry, giggling as Mrs. Min handed him a small wooden toy. The sight made Alex pause at the top of the staircase. disbelief washing over him. His mother's expression, once so distant, now carried a softness he hadn't seen in years. "Be careful, little one," Mrs. Min murmured, catching the toy before it fell. Henry clapped his hands, and she smiled despite herself. Lytuna stepped out of the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. Her eyes met Mrs. Min's, hesitant but hopeful. "Would you like some tea, ma'am?" Mrs. Min hesitated. Then, to Alex's astonishment, she nodded. "Yes, thank you." Alex descended the stairs slowly, as if afraid the fragile peace would vanish. When he reached the bottom, Mrs. Min glanced up. "You're awake," she said quietly. "You should eat something. You still look pale." Alex smiled faintly. "I'm recovering, thanks to both of you." Lytuna set the tea on the table, her hands trembling just slightly. "I didn't expect you'd like the blend, ma'am. It's a recipe my mother used." Mrs. Min took a sip. "It's gentle," she said after a pause. "Calming." Her eyes softened, the faintest acknowledgement of Lytuna's care. For the first time, they all sat together. No arguments, no accusations. Just silence, warm, heavy, and healing. Alex reached into his pocket and took out the embroidered handkerchief. He placed it on the table between them. "This," he said, "was the first gift Lytuna gave me after I fell sick. It reminded me that love isn't loud or grand. It's quiet, and it saves you when nothing else can." Lytuna looked down, tears glistening in her eyes. Mrs. Min studied the handkerchief, tracing the initials stitched in gold. A and T. Finally, she exhaled and whispered, "Maybe. That's what your father meant when he said true love doesn't need approval, only courage." Alex took Lytuna's hand gently. "Then let's keep being brave, for us and for Henry." Outside, the morning sun glowed brighter, scattering golden light across the room. In that soft, wordless moment, their small family felt whole. For the first time, peace didn't feel like a dream. It felt real.
Sau cơn bạo bệnh, Alice tỉnh lại trong bệnh viện với niềm tin hạnh phúc giản dị. Bên cạnh anh là tử na bèo bỉ Henry, khi được tặng chiếc khăn tay theo tinh tế xúc động như được trao lại niềm tin trong cuộc sống. Tuy nhiên, khi trở về nhà, mẹ anh và Minh phản đối mối quan hệ của họ, cho rằng tử na không xứng đáng nhận được thân phận tổng giám đốc. Trong cuộc đối thoại đầy ấm áp, Alice kiên nhẫn khẳng định tình yêu và lòng biết ơn của mình với tử na, và Minh dần rung động. Sáng hôm sau, trong ánh nắng mới, bà Minh bế Henry mỉm cười. Lần đầu tiên, gia đình nhỏ cuối cùng cũng tìm thấy bình yên bằng tình yêu chân thành vượt qua mọi định kiến.